Good evening. Thank you for joining the Positive Action Ministry in our weekly Bible study. This week we will explore Daniel 3, verses 1 through 15. We will assign each person here on the study a question about it to get all the details. And at the end, Brandon will give a summary followed by a discussion or questions. So we have what, we have where, how, who, when, and why. So Brandon, you're going to have the what. Jonathan, you're going to have the where and when. Hannah, you're going to have the who. Eddie will have the how.
Yes.
And I will take on the why. First, we'll start with the reading. Brandon, if you wouldn't mind reading Daniel 3, verses 1 through 5. I'll give some people time to look up that chapter in their book. Whenever you're ready, Brandon.
Daniel chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 60 cubits height and 6 cubits wide, and set it up on a plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He then summoned the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all other provisional officers to come to the dedication of the image he set up. So all the prefects, satraps, governors, advisors, treasurers, judge, magistrates, and all other provisional officials assemble for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up, and he stood before it. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, "Nations and peoples do of every language, this is what we command you to do. As soon as you hear a sound of a horn, flute, zither, harp, pipe, or any kind of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. For whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." Therefore, as soon as he heard the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, or any type of music, all nations and peoples, every language fell down and worshipped the image King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. At this time, some astrologers came forward and announced the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "May the king live forever. Your Majesty has issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn of music must fall down and worship to the image of gold. And whoever does not fall down or worship will be thrown in a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your Majesty. They neither serve you gods, nor worship the image of gold you have set up." Furious his rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned the three. So these men were brought to the king. Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods nor worship the image of gold I set up? Now when you hear the sound of the music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. If you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately to a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?"
All right, thank you for your reading, Brandon. Let's dive right into the questions here. Brandon, what is this about?
This is about King Nebuchadnezzar setting up a giant statue or idol for people to worship.
Okay, very good. Jonathan, where is this taking place and when?
This is taking place in the kingdom of Babylon during King Nebuchadnezzar's rule, which could be estimated between 605 to 562 BC.
Thank you for that. Hannah, who are the characters in this chapter?
It was mostly about King Nebuchadnezzar, but then he mentioned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yep. Do you know the alias, another name for Abednego? Does anyone know?
I do not. John said, "Is
actually-
it Daniel?"
Yes.
You're
So
correct.
that's his Babylonian name. So Daniel was his Jewish name. So it was him and two other people. All right, very good. How, Eddie?
Jesse, if I may, that is not correct. Daniel is himself Daniel. These are his three friends
Oh,
that he asked in the previous chapter when he revealed the dream to the king.
oh,
he
you're
asked,
right.
Okay, thank you. But the how is.
Oh,
what
I
is
have
it?
a question, Eddie. What is Dan? Because I know they talk about his Babylonian name. Do you remember what it is?
Daniel, I don't remember. No, not now, not from the top of my head.
Okay.
But what I was gonna say is the how is when you hear the harp, the trumpet, you are immediately to bow down to and worship the god, a statue that Nabucodonosor had made to be worshipped as soon as you hear those sounds. That's the how.
Okay, very good. And I just did a quick Google search, so I would like to apologize for my mistake. Daniel's Babylonian name was Belteshazzar. I believe in the previous chapter that was brought up. And the three friends are also those are their Babylonian names, not their real names. So, and my question was why? So I believe the king, so if we look back in those days, the king is not like a king now. So there are not that many kings in the world, but most of them are just figureheads for ceremony, for tradition. But we must think back in those days, a king was akin to a god pretty much. All he had to say is, you're dead, and that's it. No court, nothing, just because. And it all powerful pretty much. And so this was just another way for him to demonstrate and show off his strength and the control at that time that a king would have over their people. So of course, not like the democracy wasn't even a word. You couldn't, like, we could vote and we can criticize governments. That's something unheard of. That was just not happening at that time. Most of the time, what took out a leader would be a war or a competitor or a backstab, but not the common people. And so I think he made this statue again to show how strong he is and show how he could rule. And the statue pretty much represented him. And so he just wanted to remind people every time they heard some kind of music that he's the boss. And I think that's why he was doing this. Any questions so far? All right, so now we're going to go ahead to the expose. Brandon, if you wouldn't mind giving a summary / preaching on what we learned, and then we'll have some discussion afterwards.
So, thank you everyone for joining us. I think you have to take away from this message or this story because it makes it clear that King Nebuchadnezzar is not somebody to mess around with. He's putting a lot of pressure on his people to, hey, you got to praise the gold statue. You got to praise the gold statue. With being 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide, that's a big thing to praise every time you hear something like a horn, a lyre, a pipe, a flute, a zither. You have to understand at this time, imagine you walking on the street and somebody's AirPods are a little bit too loud. Then you have to get on your knees and start praying. That's how and hence the instructions are here. So this is something that's happening all the time. And King Nebuchadnezzar, which by the way owns a lot of the land, is the biggest king around. He is making this proclamation that, hey, I'm the man. I'm that guy. I'm the person that you make sure you bow down and make sure you listen to whenever you get a chance. Okay. You cannot choose not to pay attention to me. But of course, we have always the loyal people and the loyal to our God. And we have the three friends of Daniel, Sadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these guys, they're very loyal. So, when they hear the horn, the lyre, the zither, the harp, the pipe, all that, they just don't pay attention. They're like, gotta keep working. To keep eating, who cares? So what happens is the fellow advisors see this, the astrologers particularly, which if we remember from the last chapter, don't probably like Daniel very much or the Jews, because Daniel was able to interpret something they weren't. And they were very upset with the Jews, so they set them up and told on them, hey, King Nebuchadnezzar, you who makes the rules and everything you do, and everyone should be listening to it, is not listening to it. These three Jewish guys. So he brings them to court and he says, well, it's do or die, put up or shut up. When that horn plays, tell me, are you going to get on your knees or are you going to stay doing nothing? Because if you do nothing, you go into the furnace and there ain't nobody that's going to save you there. Now, luckily for us, we're in an age where we have a good amount of religious freedom in a lot of the world, especially here in America. And what's important to notice is that even though we have a lot of religious freedom, not a lot of people like to share or be proud of their religion. And we can see this all the time, especially even within our own brotherhoods and sisterhoods, where people are kind of ashamed or afraid to be Christian, or afraid or ashamed to stand up for their rights and their beliefs. Instead, what it would be the modern version is that they would bow down and they would try to fit in just to avoid here now just conflict or just a little bit of talking or even a question or two. People are afraid of simply questions, but these guys, they're about to face um, being burnt alive in a furnace, a machine that's designed to be really hot. So these guys are really taking it all for their love of God. And if we are going to be people who don't love God enough that we are ashamed, we hide, we don't talk about God, then maybe we should analyze ourselves and say we should be more like these three boys over here in the past, where they were able to stand up to the king, the absolute king of the known planet, basically, the known world, to pay attention to their own needs and pay attention to God. And the takeaway from here, guys, should be that we can't be afraid of that we love God. We don't be afraid of that, because a lot of people will say to us, who's going to rescue you when the times get tough? And we got to have faith that God will take care of us, even if it's a furnace, even if it's a little awkward conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brandon, for that. So do we have any questions? I have some, but I'll give the opportunity out to the floor first.
Okay, what I wanted to add is, so that we have an idea, a cubit is a 1.5 feet. So the statue was 90 feet tall by 9 feet wide, so that we know and have an idea how big this thing was.
Actually, I would like to say that it was 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide. So
yes, that's the equivalent of 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide.
Okay, that is correct. So in our world, if you can imagine about a building about 10 floors high, which is pretty remarkable in those days, as you can imagine, The tools weren't the same to create something so tall and made of gold. So that's a lot of gold to cover. So again, not only showing his strength and his power, but the opulence too, the richness to demonstrate his worth apparently. So thank you very much. That was one of my questions. That I have some words here that we are learning in this chapter as new vocabulary words. From the other one I wrote down was zither. So in part of the chapter here, it talks about that there was a zither. I'm assuming it's some kind of instrument, but does anybody know? I'll just Google it real quick so we can learn what a zither is.
I'm pretty sure it's a zither. It's like I don't know if it's like a harp, but like a small little.
Very
thing.
good. Yeah. So if you look here, you can see a zither. It looks kind of like a harp. And actually you could buy that in Amazon. Let's not show Renee. For $189 right now. Okay. So another vocabulary wording here that I wrote down was the satraps. So it said that, I guess this is a kind of person, because the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the royal advisors, I'm assuming it's some kind of government official. Does anybody know what a satrap is?
I think the equivalent is the protector of the kingdom. I think is the translation for a satrap.
It is a governor of a province in ancient empires. So that's a pretty high position. So the governor of a province, pretty much. I also have something I found interesting in here, and it still carries on to the real life, like we see so many times, is how fickle people can be, correct? So in the last chapter, the king couldn't do enough for Daniel. He was like, I'll give you this, I'll give you that, I'll give you a position. Wow, you're this and that. I'll say, you know, and all of a sudden now he wants to throw him in a furnace. It's like, what happened all of a sudden? And that happens to us in the real world, and we need to be prepared. You could be at the top of the world one minute and the next minute paralyzed in a wheelchair. You just have no idea what's going to happen to you. That's why we always have to enjoy every day to the fullest. And don't save the best for last, save the best for now. That's just how it is. And also a second example of that were the magi and the fortune tellers and so forth. He literally saved all their lives in the other chapter, if you remember. He said to the king, don't kill these people. I will tell you what your dream means. Now they're handing them over. Like, what a backstabbing bunch of people. So again, also exists in the world. You never know who's gonna backstab you, and all of a sudden you're sitting high on the hill and the next thing you're down in the dumps. So we always have to look for God and appreciate what we have, enjoy what we have, be grateful and generous with what we have, because tomorrow, as we say a million times, is not promised. And not only is not promised, you might not be in the same position you are right now. Things can change in 1 second, as we've seen so many times. So I thought that was another interesting take on this chapter, that people could just switch on you like that so quick. Does anybody else have a take or any more comments, questions, grievances? All right, so I think we had a great study. Thank you, guys. I can't wait to see what happens next in this chapter, so we can go ahead and discuss it. All right, thank you, everyone.